Most of the greats got to the top by competing with each other. They weren't competing with themselves. They were constantly battling with their competition. If you look in every field, you're going to see a representation of a competition. You look at Apple. At the beginning, they were battling with IBM, with the Macintosh. And then it transitioned into smartphones where they were now battling with Samsung. And in the sporting world especially, we see that you have to compete to get better. Look at the greats, you look at football, you look at Messi and Ronaldo. They spent years and years competing against each other because they were on the same level. And because of that, they propelled each other to become better, to compete more, to improve themselves. And because of this, they're two of the best football players in history. If you go to Formula 1, you look at Lewis Hamilton. Yes, he wasn't racing with Michael Schumacher. But then he was constantly competing to say, I want to win 7 titles, I want to beat him. And look now, they are both on 7 titles, and I think Lewis Hamilton's going to get the 8th. Some people seem to think that competition is a dirty word, that competition is toxic, but it isn't. Competition is necessary. Competition is necessary to keep us striving. In Proverbs, King Solomon said, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. You have to realize that the only way to get the best out of yourself and to get the best out of the people around you is to challenge and collide with each other. A challengeless life proves to be a fruitless life. So nowadays, there's this narrative of, I don't need to compete with anyone. My only competition is myself. Competition's so toxic. Compete with yourself. That's rubbish. You need to compete with others. Because when you compete with yourself, it's going to get to a point where you're better than you were yesterday. And now you're going to be complacent because you've already beaten yourself. You have to compete with others. In fact, I encourage every one of you to compete with others. As young men, we thrive on competition. We need it to feel fulfilled. It cultivates our masculine energy. And you will say, how does competing with others cultivate our masculine energy? When you're competing with someone, you're setting the goal to do better than them. That is the only goal that's in your mind. To finish before them, to do more than them. The masculine energy thrives off the goal-setting aspect of competition. Even though I've told you how competition can benefit you and put you more in your masculine, people are going to come here and say, oh, competition's toxic, don't compete with anyone, I don't want to compete with anyone. And yes, I will agree to a certain extent, competition can be toxic. But competition only becomes toxic when you compare yourself to them. See, the proper way to compete is, yes, you compete with them, you try beat them, but always compare yourself to your past self. Because that way, you will always be grateful for the progress that you have made. But since you're competing with someone else, you will never become complacent because there will always be someone else to beat. You will always have that thought that that other person's working, so I must work harder. In this life, we can't get complacent because if we get complacent, there's going to be someone working 10 times harder or even 1% harder that's going to take everything that we want. And see, when you're competing with other people, it's going to get to a point where you start beating that person that you're always competing with. When this happens, find someone else to compete with. Find someone that's on a higher level than you so that you're always improving. And when you reach that person, you find someone else. When you reach that person, you find someone else. See, the goal is to constantly improve, never reach a plateau. You have to realize that if you become complacent, there will be someone that's working even 1% harder than you that's going to get all the rewards that you've wanted. You have to push on and you have to seek discomfort.